Welcome to the ultimate landscape CEO, and in this case, the ultimate HR executive, in that we have Mary Vales, the Chief People Officer from Schill Grounds Management, as our guest. There's, you hear two sides to HR. Is it the necessary evil, gotta have it, compliance, cover your butt, etc.? Or is it your strategic advantage that really pushes your company out in front of other companies? Well, when you meet Mary, you're going to realize it's the latter. This woman has it down. She's very process oriented. She kind of talks like an operations person, if you will, but very strategic people wise, and really into the KPIs of the success of her team. She's got 14 people under her as Chief People Officer for Schill Grounds Management. She shares really a whole bunch of stuff, recruiting tips, things that, when you hear her tell them, you'll be like, okay, that makes sense. But the way she brings it across, it's like it's part of her secret sauce. She even gives tips on what to look for when doing acquisitions from her perspective. I thought that was really insightful. We talk about how when should companies take on HR person in-house? What size should they be? Who do you take on first, second, etc.? And so we really cover a lot of different bases where you learn what, in her view, what Schill needed most when they brought her on, and you learn what smaller companies, smaller than Schill, where they need help from an HR perspective. You're going to love listening to her. She is giving a talk at our Summer Growth Summit on the final day as part of the executive team, and I can't wait to see that talk. If you want to sign up for the Summer Growth Summit, there is a link in the show notes. We have our super early bird ending April 24th, and then another early bird discount a month or two later. So act now if you're trying to save money, but you'll definitely want to come and see the Schill team. Every single person I've interviewed from Schill, I've asked, hey, what are you most looking forward to show off? And they all say the same thing, literally. It's our team. Jerry Schill has attracted great talent, and I can't wait for you to meet everybody. And so here's one more person on the Schill team. Here we go. Hey, Mary, welcome to our show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, excellent. I'm so happy to have you. We rarely have someone like you in the HR profession on our show.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
So tell the audience about your current role working at Schill.
I'm Mary Vales. I am the Chief People Officer at Schill Grounds Management. I've been here 2.5 years or so. I'm responsible for all things people. So HR, compliance, recruiting, onboarding, development, safety, and all the back office stuff as well. Payroll, benefits, compensation.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so how many people report to you staff-wise?
So we have a team. There's about 14 HR folks. 4 of us are here in Cleveland, and really the administration, right? So payroll and benefits and compensation administration happens here. Out in regions, we have what I would call the face of HR. So depending on the size of the region, 2 people, an HR generalist and a recruiter, or 1 person who does it all.
So what percentage of your time is spent with your 14 people versus all the employees?
Most of my time is spent with my 14 people and the executive team here in Cleveland, where, I'm sitting today. But I like to think then it's, a cascading effect where those folks are the ones who are touching the 1,500 employees we have across the platform.
So you're like the football coach. You don't go out on the field. You just train the team.
I do go out. I love to go out. I think, one of the things that I love about my job and kind of has made myself as an HR professional is I like to be really close to the business. So 2 weeks ago was probably my last visit, where, I want to be there at launch. I want to interact with employees. I want to, study their safety practices and chat with people and serve them breakfast or whatever might be happening that day. But, it's finding the balance of time of allowing the regional HR person to really have the deepest relationship with those employees.
Do they have like scorecards that we know that Schill loves scorecards?
Mm-hmm.
Do the people that report to you, do they have scorecards?
We're working on it. So to be technical for a second, we last summer implemented one payroll system, ADP, for our entire platform. Before last summer, we had 4 at least different systems or ways of paying people. And one of the reasons we implemented ADP is it allows me and the executive team to have much better data, right? So with a click of a button, almost, I can say, here's all of our employees, regular, full-time, part-time, how many open jobs do we have, who's coming, who's going. And then that helps me create metrics for the HR folks as well. So a talent acquisition specialist, how many open recs do you have? How long does it take you to fill them? Where are you sourcing from? Those kinds of things. So I'm this close to having good scorecards.
So is that an applicant tracking software?
It is. So it's, I'd call it a human capital management system. So we can open requisitions and link to Indeed as an example and post jobs or some other online sources. And then when a candidate wants to apply, say from Indeed, it actually comes into ADP. So we can I can see every open job and every candidate across our entire platform, and then can move them through the process. Once they're interviewed by a human being, whether that's both in phone and on phone and in person, then we would launch onboarding. So try to move everything to electronic. So, there's requirements of how do you want to get paid? What's your direct deposit? Do you have ID? What are your tax withholdings? And that all can be done from a candidate's phone or a desktop computer. So that helps keep us moving this fast and compliant.
And so can you text them through ADP software?
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so does this software also do the onboarding and like once they're an employee?
Yeah. So I'll talk about our practices here, which our talent acquisition person does sourcing, and we try to drive, no matter where we get a candidate from, try to drive them to ADP to kind of start their record, if you will. So if they have a resume or fill out their name and phone number and an email address. And then we go through the interview process. We send them an offer letter through ADP. So they have a piece of paper that says start date, rate of pay, benefits, et cetera. Then they complete some of that work from their phone before they come in for an orientation session, which is with an HR person. I-9 compliance is probably number one concern in the landscape industry. And so ensuring that they have proper documentation and a human being actually seeing that, completing the I-9 process, and then getting them set up so that they can start getting paid. The cool thing that we're building here, right, is integrations with Aspire so that employees in their phone, right, can see their hours every day. They see their pay stub every week. They know what they're getting paid for. But you can't just implement technology without having human beings involved. And so the HR folks are looking someone in the eye, reviewing their documentation, and then welcoming them to Schill.
Yeah. Okay. God, I have so many questions I want to ask you. Do you want to explain I-9 to people listening, just for some of those who may not be aware?
Oh, I hope there's no one who's not aware. First and foremost, so Form I-9 is the form that is required for every employee to be completed within their first 3 days, which is to prove that they're eligible to work in the United States. So whether you're a citizen, a resident, or an alien authorization, there's specific documentation that a person has to show to say, I am who I say I am, and I'm eligible to work in this country.
Another question I wanted to ask you is, I know you guys like to do gamification and a lot, that's really, Schill's very good at it, but a lot of companies like to do that.
Yep.
And I suggested this a couple of years ago. I think it was to Frank Mariani, before they were on the same software that you're on. But it would be great if the employee could see all their incentive and games that they're participating in on the phone. Is that possible?
Yeah. We only implemented ADP last summer, so I don't know yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We have another tool. Now I'm going to start problem solving while we're on this call. But when we bought ADP, when we contracted with them, we also contracted with another system called People. And the cool part about that is it's automatically integrated. So when an employee puts their phone number in, they basically get a text from Our People that says, hey, Schill uses Our People, click here to accept. And that is a fast way for us to communicate with our frontline workers. Well, anyone, but particularly frontline, right? So I sit at a desk most of my day and I have an email address. Most of our workforce does not. And so there's a lot of platforms out there that are designed specifically for us to be able to communicate with our employees through text. They can download an app. They don't have to. They can just get a text message. And so that's a way that we could use to communicate and figure out like, oh, here's your standing in this gamification.
Right.
I've vetted a bunch of different softwares, and there's some great stuff out there that, you don't have to be as big as Schill and using ADP. There's much smaller players, but that communication method is critically important in our industry.
How big do you think a company needs to be before they start using either a people software or an applicant tracking software? Like, what's the smallest they could be and still start using it?
I'm not great at knowing the cost of some of the smaller systems because I just haven't worked in that small space. But I think that, number one, compliance. So using a system, even a cheap off the shelf, typically those payroll systems or HRIS, Human Resource Information System, or Human Capital Management, people call it.
Yeah.
You can get a cheap one and they really help facilitate your compliance. And so are we paying people correctly? Do we have proper tax withholdings, et cetera? So either you pay an accounting company, you pay a payroll service, or you just buy the software yourself.
Yeah.
They're web-based, they're easy. I would say, I'm a technology process person. So, the smaller, the better to get started, because then you can scale it as you grow.
Okay. And okay. All right. That's a good answer. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your background? I mean, I've looked at your resume and you have a lot of experience in a few different types of companies, all in HR. So that's great. You really climbed up the ladder, which makes you valuable for Schill. But how did you start?
Yeah. How much time do we have? No, honestly, I started undergrad as an accounting major. And after my second, we were on quarters back then. I was like, oh, this is terrible. I don't want to do this. What else do we have in the College of Business here? And so really stumbled on human resource. Management and labor relations is my major through the College of Business, and just kind of stumbled on it because I didn't want to do accounting or finance. And good news is I'm really good at it and I like it. So worked out well. And then, I started my career saying, I know HR, I can learn your industry. And so I had to prove that by moving to some other industries. I'm also a really curious person who gets bored easily. So changing jobs is how I kept myself kind of engaged with work, learning a new industry. And I'm also a process order person. So I started finding similarities. Like, people are people. The work is different. What we do, whether it's insurance or software or landscaping, the fundamentals of people wanting to come to work every day or not, and how we operate the business are really the same. It doesn't matter your industry. And so I was lucky to be able to kind of move through. I'm born and raised in Cleveland, and so I've worked in Cleveland my entire life. I went back to HR, and I did it because I love the strategic view of the company that you get in HR that you don't get when you're in a line of business or running a specific department. I could talk about myself for hours, Jeffrey. So how did I end up here? Well, I work for a company in Cleveland, and in 3 years, I had 3 different bosses and 3 different jobs. And in 2020, I was leading our global response to COVID. We all went home and we're working from home, except in our plants and distribution centers across the globe, and really working around the clock. COVID was a crazy time for so many people. I have 2 daughters who, one was in college, one was in high school. And so they both came home. And so it was me and my husband and my 2 kids kind of banging around our house, trying to figure out how to do our jobs. And I was loving the constant pace of, there's a claim in California. Oh, no, now it's in China. No, now it's in the UK, and this constant learning and growing. And then all of a sudden, a whole team formed around me to be our COVID response team. And my work went from 18 hours a day down to, 10, which actually worked out because my husband unexpectedly died that summer. So summer of 2020. And, I took off 2 weeks from work and...
Did he die from COVID?
Grieved, and then went back to work. And so my job changed, and then a new boss came in, publicly traded companies, right? New boss comes in, new job change. And after, I guess it was September of 21, I said to my boss, there's nothing like your husband dying at 53 to realize you don't want to stay in a job working 12 hours a day, doing stuff you don't even like. And so I left. And for on and off, honestly, 9 months, I looked for a job. I did a little contract work and traveled and did all kinds of stuff that I never thought I would do, and figured out a lot of that was me in my grieving process. The job wasn't great, but if my husband hadn't died, I probably would have stayed. And so I'm looking for a job and being very picky of where do I want to go? And I want to do stuff that's meaningful to me. And I met Jerry, and we had a phone call, and I was like, oh, I like this guy. He's smart. And it's a super cool business opportunity. And I love the mergers and acquisition space. And in 5 days, I interviewed and accepted the offer, and haven't been bored one day since coming here.
Excellent. I have a few questions for you. So
yes,
you're from outside the industry. I mean, clearly at your level, obviously, and being in HR, it's also an obvious that you're from outside the industry. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of debate in, let's just say, smaller companies or average-sized companies. Should we hire people from outside the industry to be our production manager, our director, or our general manager, operations manager, things like that? And so what's your view on that?
Depends on the job. So I think being able to promote from within is really important, but you have to have someone who wants the promotion and who has the capacity, right? GWC, as we say in EOS. So when you don't have that, bringing in outside talent is really a great opportunity because we can learn from those people. However, you have to be a good interviewer. You have to know, can this person learn our business and what value are they going to bring to us, right? So oftentimes in jobs, account management is a great example. Someone who's good, or business development, somebody who's good at that people skill. They're a salesperson, they're a customer service expert, right? We can teach them our business. On the ops side, sometimes it's really hard for people to get the pace and the systems and process for commercial landscaping specifically, right?
Yeah.
Like I describe to people, we are a production machine here, and the pace that we're working is like this. So it might be hard to bring somebody in from outside the industry who will just be blown away by what really goes on here. Right?
Yeah. I would say that's true for really any landscape company. Works at a very fast pace.
Yeah.
With a lot of variables. And
So
therefore, you need good systems to lock all those variables down.
Yes. Yeah. And the systems and process that most landscape companies have, you need somebody, if you can identify in the interview, do they have that process mindset? And are they in the service industry? Right. I know you did a podcast with Jono, who comes from the restaurant industry. The service industry is different. The demands that it places on us because customers need us and we need them, right? We need to fulfill their needs quickly.
Yeah.
That sets a very different pace than a lot of other industries. So being selective on where you're bringing somebody from would be critical.
So you said you have to be a good interviewer for sure. Give us one tip, one trick you do on that, on interviewing these people for that.
Ask the question and be quiet. Silence is the hardest thing for people. They want to fill the space. And often you see interviewers actually give the answer.
Right.
That's number one. Well, and number two, don't lie. Sometimes hiring managers are so caught up, or HR people are so caught up in wanting to fill the job that they're overselling the company or the role, right? I think of the interview process, it's like looking for a date or a life partner. It's got to be the right match for both. So if you're really honest about what the work is, what does the day look like, what's the company really like here, right? Then the candidate can also decide, is this right for me?
Yeah.
And you have to have that match, or you're going to fill the job and the person's going to leave in short order, whether because you made a mistake and never should have hired them and you're going to let them go, or they're going to quit because they realize in some way this is not right for me.
Okay, good. So you're saying it's that basic.
Yeah, really it is. We overcomplicate, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but it really is. It's really like, do you have the skill, right? So that's part of it, of course, right? Do you have the skill? Can you lift 50 pounds, consistently throughout the day? Can you be outside in rain, snow, sleet, and 100-degree heat with the sun beating on you? Like, you have to have the specific requirements, kind of the essential function, we would say, in HR speak. But it's really attitude and fit.
Okay. I have a question for you about your role. You oversee all the areas of HR, plus some that are, even I'll say slightly tangential, like safety. Yes, it's HR, but it's also very operations.
Yep.
So you oversee quite a bit. My experience when someone's looking for an HR person, certainly in a smaller company, they think they can find one person to do it all, and that doesn't really exist. Like, you wouldn't have your recruiter do your payroll, right?
Right.
Or vice versa. And so they're all specialists who work for you. And so if someone's thinking of bringing on an HR person, let's say they have no HR, or they outsource part of it, or someone's multitasking and doing parts, and they want to bring on somebody, should they aim for one of those specialties, or should they try to find a generalist like you? I mean, you do exist.
Yeah.
What's your advice there?
Well, what's the biggest need, right? And that's unique to every company. So oftentimes, you find companies who have payroll, as an example, the controller handles that, right? And so do you need an HR person who also is a payroll expert? Probably not, because it's covered by your controller and they can work together. What's your organization's biggest need? There are generalists who exist. Bachelor's degree in HR, as an example, gives someone, the foundation that they need. So small company, couple of years out of college, call it a generalist, right? And that means something to HR people. I personally like generalists. As you get bigger, then is when you can either outsource your specialists, like a benefits consulting company, a broker, right? A payroll company. You can pay someone else to do your payroll. But that generalist who's comfortable flexing all day, every day, and first I'm interviewing, now I'm dealing with a discipline. Now we're hosting a breakfast and we have an employee engagement event, or whatever. A generalist is used to pivoting.
I found, though, that, for example, recruiting is a lot like marketing or business development, but it's so different even from employee development once you get them in the door.
Yes.
And so any advice for a company listening and trying to figure out somebody who can't afford all 4 or 5 of those specialties, what do they do?
Well, again, so you want to attract people. Can your managers do it? Right. I say, we're all recruiters. All of us who represent a company, we're all recruiters. So can you afford to just have one dedicated recruiter? Probably not. But, study your organization and say, where's our biggest pain point? And we don't have anyone here who knows it.
Yeah.
And fill that job. Talent development and training is really combined with operations, right? That's one thing that has helped me be successful in my career, and what my 14 HR folks across is we're really embedded in the business, and we know how do we make money, what are our jobs really like, what are the levers that our branch managers and operations folks are pulling to drive efficiency and profitability, and then where's the gaps, right? So if I were starting my own landscape company, I would look for an HR generalist who understands that their number one job is to understand the business and solve problems and how to partner with others. So finance person to help with payroll, consulting company to help with benefits compliance or whatever.
When I was first starting off, and I think I'm older than you, we're going back a few years. I remember hearing somebody I really respected say, you need a full-time HR person for every 100 full-time employees. This is going way back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you don't really need that until you're at 10 million out of pick a number. And these are old dollars, not new dollars.
Yes.
And these days, it seems to me that neither one of those really apply. The need for HR is much greater than, waiting for 100 full-time employees.
Agreed.
And if you wait till you're 10 million, you may not get to 10 million without that help. How should a company these days think about when do they hire their first HR person?
So I know those same stats, and actually spent a bunch of time in my career trying to figure out through different industries, what is the number? HR people aren't really good at that because they're all just trying to justify their jobs, right? We're overhead. So it's like, larger company, you need 3 HR people. Why? Just because we need to be here, right? I think I'm trying not to be political at all, but there's 2 issues. I think the sooner you can afford either a regular an employee who's an HR professional, or there's tons of fractional help. And I think that's a great solution because there's things in your business that you just can't screw up. They will bankrupt you. I-9 compliance is one of them. Other wage and hour compliance things, right? And especially today, and depending on where your business is, ICE raids are happening all over the country. If you aren't compliant with I-9 and if you're hiring illegal people, even innocently, it will put you out of business. So, get a fractional HR consulting company to help you. If you want to really drive an environment where people will, so set the compliance stuff aside, where people will come and want to do good work and feel good and grow their careers, you can also do that through management consultants and training. But you as the owner or the leader have to set the tone that that's the environment you're trying to create. And so why are you putting your managers through some training? Yeah. Why are you providing coaching opportunities for them to get better at people management, right? Setting your purpose, right? Our core values, number one is employee-centered, and it's always number one. We're a people business. And so we set that tone. And so, should you hire an HR person? Yes, of course you should. It's my career. Right? Are there other ways you can get the help you need? Yes.
Gotcha. All right. That is a fair answer. So when you joined Schill, what was the biggest gap, problem, opportunity, however you want to call it?
So I think the pace of growth, right? I started in September of 22, and Jerry and the organization before me had acquired so many companies in such a short period of time, and we're continuing to acquire. And so we didn't have the HR systems and process in place to really support the growth. So I describe my first few months as being in a toilet bowl, swirling toilet bowl, and every once in a while I could come up and catch my breath for a second, right? And it was getting the foundation in place, and implementing one HR system was a critical piece of that. That took us a while, but just really getting my arms around what's going on here. We often back then particularly would buy organizations that they didn't have an HR person, they didn't have any specialists. And so it's how did you pay people? Oh, that lady, office manager, so-and-so, right? Okay, well, where are your payroll records? I don't know, what do you mean, right? And so just getting my arms around all that and trying to put in repeatable process, and then training managers, ops managers, branch managers on those systems and processes so that we could scale, right? And that we were compliant. So those were two of the things.
Gotcha.
Learning this industry and keeping up with the entrepreneurs was also a big challenge, right? I sat next to the Jim Schill, who's director of operations, and he came into my office and said, "Hey, what are we doing for such and such?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." He's like, "Well, it's November. We always do this in November." I just started a month ago. I have no idea what you always do in November. Yeah, I forgot. Right. So people just assumed I knew the industry. And so it took a whole year really to figure out the seasonality and what happens in the spring, and then 100 Days of Hell, and that, right? And the whole process, it takes a long time. And so I would have to raise my hand of I never worked here before. What's going on? Can you help me?
Yeah. You guys plow snow too?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I knew that, but I didn't realize it meant we were going to hire all these seasonal shovelers, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that was the biggest challenging gap. A lot of people listening also do acquisitions, right? You can be a $2 million company and do an acquisition, or $4 million company.
Mm-hmm.
What should someone that's about to do an acquisition or even thinking about it, give them a couple pointers from your seat?
So spend the time on due diligence, really getting to know the company and their practices and the people. We do a really good job here of buying or partnering with organizations that fit. And so culture really is a big deal. If you don't know what your own culture is or what you want your culture to be, you can't select another company, right? Because you don't know if there's a fit or not.
Yeah.
The other part is, like recruiting, don't oversell. In every industry I've ever worked, the boss comes in, the CEO, whoever he is, and says, hey, we just bought your company. Nothing's going to change. That's a lie. Everything is going to change. Even if you have a light touch with your integration, things are changing. People work for this little small company, and now they're working for a little bigger company. Maybe their pay stubs say something else. Maybe their uniforms change. The administrative team feels the most change. And so don't lie to them, because now they're just pissed. Like, well, Jerry said nothing was going to change, and everything in my world has just changed, right? And so being careful in your words. So what we say is, when it comes to servicing your customers, keep doing what you're doing. But here's the non-negotiables: finance and HR. And so be honest about it.
Okay. I'm just going to summarize what you said just to internalize it. So you talked about really doing your due diligence about their people and their processes, and understanding your own culture so that you can understand theirs. You can't really understand somebody else's if you don't know yourself, right?
Yeah.
Know thyself, know other people.
Yes.
And be honest with them, just like you are when you're hiring and recruiting. I like that.
Yeah.
Honesty takes you far.
It does.
Excellent.
Yes.
Tell us what you're excited to show off or have us see when we come visit you this August for our Summer Growth Summit.
We have a great team here. And honestly, Jeffrey, I've been going backwards and listening to your podcast. It reminded me of like, oh, yeah, I work with Jono all the time as an example, but taking a step back and listening to his story again and hearing the way he thinks again. Jerry's really good at identifying talent. I say that a little tongue in cheek because he hired me, but he is, right? And
you're the most humble HR person I've ever met, Mary.
So, we have a great team here. And part of it is Jerry's good at identifying talent. We have some strong leaders. We create an environment and constantly are working on creating an environment where you have trust, and you get that by listening to people, taking their feedback, and then closing the loop. Even if it's like, oh, hey, Jeffrey, great question, great idea. No, we're not going to execute your idea. Maybe we can try something else, or here's the reasons why we're not. That really builds a culture of trust. And now we're all working together towards common goals. Gamification helps, incentive pay helps, but I think people will be really impressed by our team. And, we actually like each other, so that helps too.
Were you just channeling Jerry there when you said, hey, great idea? No.
I mean, I'm wired that way too, so.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone I've interviewed has given me that answer, so I'm not surprised you said that. Give me a second answer, something that we'll be surprised about.
Oh, boy. What will you be surprised about?
Yeah.
I think process. We do it really well here.
Yeah.
And I said before, I'm a process order person, and I see it everywhere. And so I hope that for those people who aren't process order, we can demonstrate that and how it helps us drive accountability and efficiency, which equals profitability, but also equals, really the fundamental thing of people management is a manager telling someone what's expected of them and then how they're doing against those expectations. And so the systems and process we have in place are designed so that a manager can easily tell someone the facts of how they're doing.
Yeah.
And employees can see it themselves, right? Dashboards and KPIs up on screens and things like that. And so that's what really I hope people are impressed with when they come here and learn more about how we run organizations.
I was impressed, actually, when you just said that 30 minutes ago, how process-oriented you are, and you've said it now a few times, Maybe that's also a tip that people should keep in mind when they're hiring this HR person for their company, the first one. Ideally, that you bring somebody in who likes and understands process and really is helping to solidify a company's processes that will in turn solidify accountability and the culture and even the confidence of managers, et cetera.
Yeah, I think, if you're talking about hiring, whether it's an HR person or any role, it is, again, that like know thyself. And my personal bias is towards people who have a continuous improvement mindset. And so we're not all process people, right? Your best recruiter is not going to be a process person because they're salespeople, and salespeople aren't great process people either, right?
Right.
So having it clearly defined and being able to show it and talk about it helps those people who aren't processed, right? But if you're hiring HR people, if you're hiring operations people, they do need that mindset and the continuous improvement, right? We here like to win. I like to win. And so, having good methods that I can measure, where was I today? Where am I tomorrow? Am I achieving these goals? And is our organization, advancing? And so hire a person and listen to them. You will actually learn something from, questions or suggestions that they have.
I'm excited for your presentation you're going to give. I'm excited to come see Schill again in person.
Good.
And this was a great podcast, Mary. Thank you so much for giving us your time and thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. We are excited to have you show off our company, show off Cleveland a little bit. And I think it's going to be a great time.
What are the top 5 things to do in Cleveland besides see you guys? What else should we do?
Well, we have sports here. So summer, it'll be the Guardians. We're right on Lake Erie. So there's some beaches. The water's brown, but it's clean and safe. It just looks that way. It's not an ocean, right? The Flats are a venue along the Cuyahoga River where there's bars and restaurants and outdoor entertainment, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or drive about 40 minutes south to see the Football Hall of Fame.
Okay. That was more than I thought. You have a lot of good answers.
Lifetime Clevelander. I love living here.
Mary, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jeffrey.